references because, you know, it snowed and my mouse was here at school and I was at home, so I couldn't look them up. Read my memo. Oh, on the comments, if I said, we're going to talk about this, we're going to rewrite this, you need a referral to the Writing Center, you've got to remind me because I don't write, those are just on numbered papers, and when you come in and say, you said you were going to do this, remind me. Read my memo, look at the research outline, especially look at the case grid. I think the case grid will tell you a lot about, give you some insight into my research process and how I actually answer questions like this. Write down the questions that you want to ask me or the skills that you think you need to work on so we can use our time effectively. We'll have 20 to 30 minutes to talk about this. Bring hard copies of your memo with all of the comments and the checklist. And that way, as soon as you walk in, we can get started looking at those and I won't have to waste time printing them out. Good? Yes?
Can we bring our research journals so we can see what we went wrong?
Oh, yeah.
That was one of those
Sure.
4 pieces.
Yes. Definitely. Questions about memo 3? Yes?
What percentage of our homework grade was it?
Oh boy, I don't remember that. It's on the syllabus. I think it's not?
The syllabus shows last semester's grading.
Does it really? And nobody's brought that to my attention. It's like 15%, 20%, something like that.
How much of the email memo is a portion of our memo?
I can't believe that's not on there. It's like 5%. Yeah. So the question is, I bombed memo 3.2, am I out of luck? Should I just leave now? And the answer is no, because the trial brief is worth like 45%. So there is still time to come back from a bad hit on memo 3.2. You can, but you should meet with me so we can figure out how you're going to do it. Okay? And what are you going to be doing over spring break? Skiing, sitting on a beach with a drink with a little umbrella. No, you're going to be working on the trial brief. Yes, you're going to be going through the same research process, plus a few extra things that we'll talk about next week to get going on the trial brief so that you're further ahead at the end of spring break than you would be if you actually went on vacation. Yeah.
What was the class average?
Well, it curved up to like 4 or something like that. So, whatever it took to get close to a 3.0 GPA was about 84 on this assignment. Yes?
Yeah, your syllabus was emailed to us, and just for anybody who is interested, memo 3.2 is 15%. Memo 3.1 is 5%.
Okay. It's on syllabus.
The email version.
It's in the email version, not the
Not on
online
the
version.
Twitter.
Okay, who knows what happened to it? I'll fix it. So it'll be
Maybe YouTube links.
go to the syllabus and click on YouTube on the syllabus. That, I know that one works. I don't care about Twin. I'm going to take that link off of Twin so people stop clicking on it. Okay, so when you find out you're going to have me for a professor, the thing that worried you was, is it going to be radically different than Professor Kelly? And I think maybe the answer you now know is it's not
Yes.
radically different. Is it?
Technology.
Yeah. I think Professor Kelly probably would have assigned roughly the same grades. Take your paper to him and ask if you want. So I don't think consistency is the issue. So if you didn't get the result that you want, please don't blame the change in professors because I don't think that's what's going on. It's, we can work on skills. That's what's going to be better. One last thing, why did I get these back to you in a case? Because I think if I wait a month and then hand it back to you, you don't care anymore, right? It's the rapid return of work. And then what we should do is you should do another memo that's due next week. And then get that one back and then do another one. And that's how you make progress. And that's how you come to hate life. But if you were fortunate enough to take my other class, that's what it is. You write a memo, you get it back the next day. You write another memo, you get it back the next day. You write another memo, you get it back again, and so on for a whole semester. Fun. But people in that class make tremendous progress. So anyway, you got it back now.
Are we going to do another email memo?
No.
Or no? No. So we're done with memos then?
We are done with memos. We will
Okay.
now move on to the trial brief.
Okay.
Which is trial brief. It's going to be essentially like a memo, except it's persuasive.
Okay.
Ooh, that sounds like a big change. No, it's essentially going to be the same. And what should you be doing over spring break? Should you be trying to write a persuasive brief when you've never written a persuasive anything? No. If you write an objective memo, if you write memo 4, then you can turn it into a trial brief very easily. So approach it like a memo project. But no more email memos. This letter is probably the last letter that you're going to write for me this revision. And we're going to focus on persuasion and trial reviews and moral advocacy for the rest of the semester. Which will be here sooner than you think. Okay, let's talk about the MBT because that's what you're losing sleep over now. Mr. Foreman, go ahead. No, don't hand those out yet. Get out the MPT problem, the one that you worked on over the weekend. You know, the EDI versus Melly. Hang on to those documents for now. We won't pass them out just yet. Here's the problem. I really wish that we had Tuesday's class to talk about this, but we were all frolicking out in the snow instead. But that's okay, because there's really not that much to know. I've already told you, right, that you're not going to be writing a letter or a trial brief or a will or interrogatories or anything like that. You're going to be writing an objective memo on the NPT, just like you've already written in this class several times. It's going to be an objective memo. Now, let's talk about format. We got some way through talking about the NPT last time, but I can't remember exactly. So I'm going to just take things more or less randomly as they come to me. In fact, we got through the task statement, didn't we? We wrote the task statement. Yes, we wrote task statements to figure out, to remind ourselves what we were going to do. And how many people finished their task statements and then used it as their guide for actually answering this question? It's important. If you have a task statement and you can stay focused, these are the 3 questions I'm supposed to answer. Is there a duty? What is the duty? Did they breach the duty? Right? Stay focused. I'm writing an objective memo with those 3 questions. Okay, as soon as I write my task statement and I know that what I'm supposed to do is write an objective memo and it's going to have these 3 points in it, I go ahead and start writing a memo. Because on the NPT, they expect the document you turn in to look like the document they assigned. And you know by now what an office memo looks like. It says memorandum at the top. It's got to, from, date, regarding. Right? That's what you have to type. Don't make it look like a letter. By the way, some of you gave me letters that look like memos. That's not good. Sending a letter to the client is supposed to look like a letter. So fix that. Writing a memo on the NPT, make it look like a memo. If they ask you for a letter, make it look like a letter. You're going to be writing a memo. So if you're unfamiliar with how to type the basic memo heading format, you know, this stuff, to, from, all that, practice that over the weekend. So I'm telling you, you're going to be doing it on Tuesday. So as soon as I know it's an objective memo, I go ahead and type that stuff. You should pay attention to what the instructions say about who this memo is for. Is it for the senior partner or whoever wrote you the memo, or are you writing this for some third person? Because you got to get the name right. That's worth some points. If you're writing a letter, make sure you're addressing it to the right party. Be very careful with the instructions because part of this is a test to see how well you can follow the instructions. Okay, so I get my memo heading on there. That's easy. You really don't even have to think about it. Just make sure I'm writing it to the right person. Then why not go ahead and type my 3 headings? I know I'm going to be talking about these 3 things in the memo. I go ahead and get those headings in right away. That does 2 things. 3 things really. 1, it helps me focus on remembering that I've got those 3 things to talk about. So they're right there on my electronic blue book page already. 2, I get it out of the way and now I don't have to worry about it. And 3, it gives me a place to start typing notes that correspond to those different elements or these different questions that I have to answer. I'll explain what I mean by that in minutes. But that's the first thing I do is go ahead and start typing the headings. Even though I don't know what the law is and what the facts are, I know I'm going to have these headings. Skip them on the page. That way I don't have to worry about it later. And when the assigning memo says that you're supposed to have these 3 things, well, you better have those 3 things on the page in the order that they are listed in the assigning memo. Because when the graders are going through these things and they've got a stack of like 100 and they've got, I don't know, 1 evening to get through all of them, they are going through so quickly. I was like, just checking off boxes on their grading checklist. If you write something that's brilliant, but it's not what they're expecting because it doesn't have these 3 subheadings, you're not going to get a good score. It's all a reader expectation test. You've got to give them what they're expecting, and what they're expecting is an objective memo with a regular objective memo heading at the top and headings that describe the 3 different questions that you're answering. Give them what they're expecting, you'll do better. Yes?
I have a question. And I'm pretty sure I did it wrong, but I'll ask you one.
Sure.
Like, so on the 3, I only put mine for agency and then the level of care. And with the level of care, I discussed whether or not they breached the duty. So I didn't have a third breach section, but I did explicitly state it in my conclusion and in other places. I just,
3 questions, you want to have 3 sections. Definitely. Yeah. Because a grader who's in a hurry and is not being careful is not going to dig through your memo to see where's that 3rd section. It's not here. There's no 3rd section. 30% off.
Are they picky about the headings? Should the headings be verbatim what it says, how they are?
No, I don't think they're picky. I
Okay.
can't speak for the graders because that's an ever-changing population of people.
Right.
But I would say no, as long as you've got something in there. Now,
Okay.
sometimes the instructions will say descriptive headings.
Okay.
So then you probably put a little bit more. In the one that I wrote, you go ahead and hand out the sample answer that I wrote. So I did this in 75 minutes last year because this was the NPT that we gave to the students. I think I actually put what the questions were. I used those as my headings. And it helps me stay focused on the questions I'm supposed to be answering. Plus, it lets the grader know, oh yeah, there's the question. I see it, it's right there. Actually, I take that back. I did not do that. I have, my first heading is BBI was Melly's agent. My second one is BBI owed Melly a duty to inform him of relevant information. So I have more descriptive questions. Okay, how many people ran out of time on this? Yeah, that's good. I expected you to run out of time. How many people finished with lots of time left over? Okay, if you finish with lots of time left over, that's a problem because you will not have enough time. You'll have enough time to write an answer, but you will not have as much time as you wanted to have on either this NPT that we're doing in LARW or on the actual NPT. Yes, I realize these are misstapled. I don't know what happened. Sorry. Deal with it. So the question is, how do you allocate your time? If you ran out of time on this one, then that suggests that you did not allocate your time in an efficient way. And allocation is going to be different from one person to another, so there's no one size fits all. It's not like you need to spend half the time reading and half the time writing. And really there are 3 tasks that you're doing here. If we're going to take it up to a macro level and just look at it from 10,000 feet, 3 things that you have to do. You have to read all the stuff. You have to think about all the stuff. And then you have to write your answer. So you've got those 3 tasks. And depending on how quickly you do any one of those 3, you're going to allocate your time accordingly. So let's say you're like me and you're a really slow typist, like 20 words a minute or something normal like that. Then you need to spend more time typing and less time reading and just thinking. What if you're a really fast typist, 100 words a minute? Well, then you can spend more time reading and thinking about it and outlining and less time typing because you know when it comes time to put the answer on the page, you're not going to have a problem. You can get that part done. So think about, of those 3 big tasks, 3 big areas, how much time do you personally need to spend on any one? How do you figure that out? Do our practice problems. You've got that one, there's another one up on the website, there's supposed to be a 3rd one up there, but apparently it's not appearing, so I'll fix that. And then I'm going to try and get some others up there as well. I don't know how many of you want to work. You've only got 4 days to get ready. I would say 3 is plenty. Plenty. But if you are glutton for punishment and you want to do more, you can just search on Google for NPT practice exams, and you'll find the full-blown NPTs from bar exams for the last 20 years. And use any one of those. Most of them have sample answers and point sheets along with them. If you do that, pay attention. I'm going to tell you this. I'm not going to write it down anywhere. If you do one of those, you go out and get one on your own and answer that. Give yourself 2 hours instead of 75 minutes. Because we cut the ones down for LARW where we write them from scratch so that you can get it done in 75 minutes. The ones that are out there are the real bar exam ones. That's what a law school graduate, which you are not, a law school graduate should be able to do in 90 minutes. So I give yourself 2 hours and see how you do. So if you want to do extra practices, they're out there. But I think 3 is plenty to be ready for this. So you got to figure out how you're going to allocate your time. For me, it's like 2/5 reading, and then I'm typing as I'm going through, and I'm going to explain to you what I mean by that. I'm typing on the page so that I'm not just taking notes on paper that I then have to transcribe onto the typed page. I'm putting as much into the document as I can as I'm going through the file and the library. That way I have less typing to do at the end. Now, if you're a slow typist like me, and you think, oh, well, I'm just not gonna have time to think about this, I'm gonna have to start typing right away, you know what, that's okay. Because writing is a form of thinking. On your doctrinal exams last semester, did you ever know what the answer was on a long essay until you actually got to the end of the essay and wrote the conclusion of your IRAC? I can't tell you how many times in law school I thought I knew what the answer was, but then by the time I'd written the whole thing down, I realized that's not the answer, it's this other thing. Maybe the exact opposite, which is why we do IRAC on exams, because we don't know what the answer is when we start writing. It's going to be the same thing on the NPT. By writing about it, you're actually thinking about it. By actually having to put the facts with the rule, it might change the way you're thinking about the problem. So if you're a slow typist like me, it's not a lost cause, because just by typing the stuff in, you'll be thinking about it and processing it and coming up with the answer. So for me, it's about 2/5 reading and 3/5 writing. Use all the time, do not leave the examination room before you are finished. You can always go back and make it better. Check your spelling, your punctuation, make sure you get all the issues in there, go back over the assignment memo. Do not walk out until the time is up. I don't think that's going to be a problem for anybody in here because you've already done the practice one and you know it's going to take the full amount of time to do a good job. Okay, processing this problem. So we've got our task statement, we've written down on the first page, we know what we're supposed to be doing. What's the next thing we do after that?
Skim the facts.
Skim the facts, right. So I was sitting in a faculty meeting today and I was trying desperately to get ready for my other class while paying attention to what was going on there. So I hadn't looked at this in a year, so I had to refresh my memory. Did I go to the library right away and start reading the library? No, I read the facts, right? I skimmed through the facts to refresh in my mind what actually happened in this case. But I didn't take a lot of notes or do a lot of underlining. Just go through the facts quickly just to see what's in there. You don't know what's important yet because you don't know what the law is. But you have some glimmers. You know it's an agency problem. So the relationship between Melly and the travel agency is something you have to pay attention to. Okay, so you blow through the facts quickly. Then you get to the library, and this is where we need to slow down and start paying attention and taking more detailed notes. So the first thing in the library of this case is what? Okay, so restatement. The first thing they give you is a restatement. What do you think immediately? It's the restatement. So
It's not the law.
it's not the law. They've given you something that is not the law. So what are you going to be looking for when you get into the cases?
Rules,
What do we,
case law rules, how the court defines agency.
yeah, okay, so it might, whatever the cases say might be different from what the restatement says. Unless the case says, what I'd be looking for is, we therefore adopt the restatement approach to principal agent law, right? Then you know that the restatement is it's not still not the law in your jurisdiction, but it's what the courts are going to look at to figure out what the law is. Did we have any such thing in the cases here? Yeah, they don't say they adopted. Is the rule in the cases consistent with what the restatement says? Yeah, it is. You don't know that going in, that by the time you're done analyzing the problem, you say, okay, yeah, it's all roughly consistent. And what is the restatement anyway? Somebody says, talk about it. It's a
Summary of all the
it's
case
the
law.
it's the summary of the case law, right? For all jurisdictions. Or what the case law should be, what common law should be. So it's not a statute, but it tells you something important. So we've got this quasi-statutory thing that has not been adopted. That's okay. I'm going to go through this, I'm going to parse out the rules that are in the restatement so that I can put them into my answer. So we look at this first section, section 1. What rule is this? This is the test for to determine whether is there a principal-agent relationship? Hey, what's the first question you have to answer on this memo? Is there a principal-agent relationship? Hey, how about that? It all fits together. Now, remember I said I put those headings in my electronic Blue Book answer at the beginning, once I know what the questions are, and then I use that, I start filling in as I go along. I'm using that to remind me, and I now have a place to actually put stuff as I find it in the library in the file. the first thing I would type is whatever this test is for agency. And I would put it right under the heading for that first question, because I know this is the rule or part of the rule anyway that's going to answer that. Instead of making a note on a separate sheet of paper, why not just type the test right there into my memo? So I don't have to go back and do it later. It's right there on the page already. Okay, so that's what I would do. What is the test under the agency, or statement of agency to determine if someone is an agent?
Principal asked them to do something and they accepted and they're really control of the
Manifestation by the principal, agent's acceptance, understanding that the principal is in control. Those three things. 3-element test, right? So I would list those three things out. You can just state it as a rule. Under the restatement, someone is an agent if 1, 2, and 3. Go ahead and list those out. Save yourself a lot of time that way. Type in the rule as you go. Okay, so we get past that one. I get down to section 379. What is this? Okay, it says there in the heading what it is. I would say that's conspicuous. It's bold and it's set off. So the conspicuous heading says duty of care and skill. What's our second question? What's the duty of care if there was an agency relationship? Okay, so what is the duty of care? I'm going to go ahead and type that right into my answer underneath that second heading. I'm just filling in the blanks as I go. Yes, I'm going to have to go back and turn it into a paragraph and add some words, but why not get the basic information right there at the time I'm looking at it, so I don't have to go through the library more than once. I want to get through this one time and be done. Next part of the restatement. What's that? It's more duty. So this is also relative to the second question. When does the agent have duty to give information? So I write whatever that is right into my answer. And now I'm pretty much done with the restatement. I've got the important parts copied out into my answer already, and I can move on from there. Now, there's another way to do that. I know you guys don't like alternatives. You want one way, but sometimes, you need a structural framework instead of just typing stuff right into the answer already. I think we talked about this last time. So, Mr. Foreman, put a trash can, please. Someday we will have these set of working markers. So the first question is agency. I've got a 3-factor test. I'll list the factors down this side. As I'm going through the facts, right, after I've gone through the law and the cases, now I'm going back to the facts for that more detailed review of the facts. As I find facts that are relevant to each of these factors, I'll write them down. So that first, I'm sorry, these are elements, not factors. That first element is, what's the first element of the agency test under the statement? Mr. Barry, you said it.
The principal has to ask.
Okay, so ask. Did Nellie ask BVI to make his travel arrangements? Yes, so write that down, he asked. The second one was the agency agrees. And they agreed, whatever facts are relevant to that. And then the last one was, this more complicated one, relinquish control. Did you relinquish control, whatever facts are relevant to that. Now, how do I use this when I'm actually writing my answer? Well, I have to state the rule. I'll just go down and say, an agency relationship exists when 1, 2, 3, state the rule, and then go through the application and say, in our case, all 3 elements are met. First, whatever the facts are of the first element. Second, whatever the facts are of the second element. Third, whatever the facts are of the third element. This gives you an easy way to write your answer without really having to think too deeply about it, because you just list the elements of the rule and you go through your application. You have 3 parts in the test, have 3 parts in your application. And I don't mean 3 separate paragraphs or 3 separate headings. You like 3 sentences in a simple case like this. Does that make sense? I'm really into graphical tools that help me shortcut the thinking process so I can see it. And if I can see it and organize it like this in a very basic way, then it's easy for me to figure out what the answer is and write about it, because this already gives me the framework. Break the rule down, put the facts with the different parts of the rule. When I'm writing about it, I just have to list the different parts of the rule and then apply it to the facts. And it takes me a lot longer to talk about this than it actually takes to do it. You do this very quickly for a simple test like the 3-element test to determine if there's an agency relationship. There's not much to say about it. Everybody still with me? You're all looking very blank. Okay.
Still.
Let's take a step back for a reality check. Keep telling you everything's going to be okay. Not sure you believe me anymore. It's going to be okay. We're all in the same boat, right? Well, you are. But because none of you have done this. Under time pressure, anyway. So it's okay, right? I'm not looking for perfection at all. I'm looking for what a 1L could reasonably get done in 75 minutes. My expectations are pretty low for this assignment. And the goal is really to introduce you to something that you'll have to master when you get out of law school before you take the bar exam. You don't have to master it now, but will someday. This is to get you thinking about how you're going to get from where you are now to where you need to be 3 years down the road. Yeah.
We're gonna write this in EBB, not in Word or anything else.
Yes, unfortunately, it has to be easy.
No, I actually prefer that over Word right now.
Do you really?
That it gives me fits.
Okay. Well, you're probably the only person in the world who likes to eat anymore. But that's good. You'll be in your element.
Spell check in
Yeah, no, does there any spell check now?
There wasn't before, I don't know if there is.
I don't think there is. Yeah, copy and paste apparently doesn't work
You
either.
can cut and paste.
I think you can copy and paste within the document, but you can't like make 2 copies within the document because there is. I don't know. I didn't write it. I don't like it. I wish you didn't use it. But I hope you will use it because it's way easier for me to grade your stuff if you type it than if you handwrite it. Right? And you want me to be happy when I'm reading your stuff. What? I can't even read this. Okay. We've gone through the restatement. We pulled out the relevant rules. Now we get to the cases. I think I mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. When we look at this first case, we're ready. I want to note the jurisdiction and the date. The jurisdiction might have something to do with it. The date might or might not. It depends. But you should always pay attention to the jurisdiction and date every time you read a case under any circumstances, NPT or not. This case is from what jurisdiction? Franklin, Court of Appeals. And we're in what jurisdiction? Franklin. Okay, so here's a case that's going to be binding on us. Within this case are 2 other cases, Wilson v. Transair and Chrétien v. Liberty Travel. Are those Franklin cases? No, one is from Indiana and one is from New York. So those are not binding on us, but they are cited by the case here that we have from Franklin. So I'm comfortable using those cases unless the court is saying, that case was just wrong, we're not going to do that. If the court seems to be adopting what those cases did and applying it to their own facts, then I'm comfortable using those cases as precedent. So instead of just one case already, we really have 3 cases that we can cite in our memo, or that we can use to tell the reader what the rule is. Pay attention to that. When the case you're looking at cites other cases, you can probably use those cases too. So there we got the case. We'll skip over picking out the rule from that case just for a minute because we're going to run out of time. We'll look at the Yanez case, which is from what jurisdiction? California. And the Yanez case itself cites another California case, McCollum v. Friendly Hills. Okay, so now we're completely outside our jurisdiction, but if this case is consistent with the Franklin case that we have, or if it is consistent with the restatement, then I'm comfortable using this case too as authority. Occasionally, so I'm told, I've never actually seen this, but I'm told that there might be completely irrelevant authorities thrown into the MPT. I've never actually seen an example of that, and I've looked at a bunch. Just be aware that it could possibly happen. All right, but these cases, I'm comfortable using them all, and I think they're all relevant. All right, so we get through the cases, and we've extracted the rules. As you're going through the cases, you need to be careful and look for rules that are inconsistent with what you already think the rule is based on the restatement or the statute or whatever that you have in this instance, the restatement, or rules that are consistent, right? So you're trying to make sure they're not throwing you a fast one and make the restatement completely irrelevant in Franklin. And it's not, because the rules are all consistent in these cases. Okay, A question that no one has asked, but you're probably thinking, is how much of an explanation do I have to write for these cases in my CREAC? And the answer is really none. None. We're not writing a CREAC, we're writing crack. Okay? Conclusion, rule, application, and conclusion. You're going to use the case